Okay, so what we have down to cover today is nested conditionals, which I mentioned a little bit in yesterday's video over conditionals. So what I would like to do, instead of going through the slides, since we kind of already did that, I would like to just go through another example where we go through and trace code. Tracing code is where you already have a code block and you go through and read it and see if you can kind of follow the flow of execution, if you can kind of go through and see like the control path the computer is taking, and see if you can kind of predict what the output would be, if you can see, you know, which branches it would go into and which ones it would not. So I would like to trace some code that has a nested conditional. Remember, nesting is where you have a conditional inside of another conditional. And then I think I would like to go ahead and just write some more programs in Python. I think we could use a few more code examples in this class. So this first one that I'm going to show you, it's written in C++. So some of the syntax is not exactly what we are used to, but the logic is really what I'm wanting to emphasize here. So here you can see that we kind of have some variables, and these variables are bools. If you remember, a bool value is true or false, right? It can simplify down and we can have a whole like expression, almost like a mathematical expression, but it can be combined and simplified and it will evaluate in the end down to true or false. And here we have some conditionals. A conditional is going to be a piece of code that does not always run. Whether or not it runs will depend on if these certain conditions have been met, okay? And I can tell that these are nested conditionals because some of these are inside of other if-else statements. And again, the syntax is a little bit different. We don't have to have these curly braces in Python. We don't have to have these semicolons in Python. And we don't have to have these parentheses in Python. Those are all ways that Python has tried to simplify the grammar of the language. They've really tried to make it a very simple programming language to write in. Now let's see if we can figure out what this program is doing. This, our flow of control is going to start at the top. We're going to go top to bottom. We're going to read things left to right, just like we read a book. So I would start here and say, if hungry, hungry is a Boolean value. It has a true or false in it. So the very first thing I'm going to do is look at this if statement and see what it evaluates to. If this is true, then I'm going to enter into that branch. I'm going to come inside of it and see what code it tells me to do. If this conditional was false, I would come all the way down here to its if else statement. And if else statement is like a fork in the road. You have to choose one of those two paths. So hungry is true. So yes, we are hungry. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to enter into this branch. I'm going to look at this code here. I start with the very next line. It's another conditional. If money. Okay, so what we are going to do depends on whether or not we're hungry and whether or not we have money. So if money is true, then we will come into this branch. We'll consider this piece of code. Else, if money is false, we will come down here and we will run this code right here. Money is false. So what are we going to do? We'll come down here. We have to eat at home. So if you're hungry, but you don't have any money, you need to eat at home, right? However, if we had been hungry and we would have had money, then we could come into this branch and what we did would depend on whether or not we were dressed to go out. So if you're dressed, you can go eat out, but if you're not dressed, just order delivery, right? It's not worth worrying about. If you weren't even hungry to begin with, if from right off the bat this had been false, we would have come down here to this else statement, we would take a nap because we don't need to worry about getting food because we aren't hungry. So take a look at this, see if you understand the flow of control and see if you would be able to know what different like starting values would kind of result in, what your output would be. Can you figure out what variables you would have to have here, or what input values you would have to have in order to get eat out, order delivery, eat at home, and take a nap? That would be a really good way to kind of check and make sure that you are comfortable with the idea of nested conditionals. Okay. In Python. And we will call this conditional practice. Because I think we need a little bit more practice writing programs in Python with conditionals. Whenever you write program 2 is going to require that you use a conditional statement. You have 3 different options for program 2. There's 3 different difficulty levels, and you can pick the program that is sort of best suited to your experience level. You can choose whichever one you want to write. They're all worth the same amount of points, but they are all going to use conditionals. So let's just kind of practice that in this video, and then we'll call it a day for Wednesday. So this video is going to be a little bit short, which is nice. I am going to start with my comment heading, just like I kind of have every time. So I'll have my name, and I'll have my course, and then I'll have a little just kind of description of what this program is going to do. So the description. And we are going to, what are we going to have this program do? What's a good example of something that could use some nested conditionals? We are going to determine, we're going to make a little story. We're going to make just a little story. I do this in class with my CS1 class, and we make a pretty extensive one with like multiple paths and storylines. We're going to make a very simple one in this video. So this will be a choose your own adventure story. Simple. Okay. And we will start by print the setting and let the users make the first choice. So we're going to create a little choose your own adventure story. If you don't know what those are, it's where a story is going along and they give the user a choice, kind of a decision between 2 paths. And then what happens in the story is going to depend on the choice that they made. And so in order to work with nested conditionals, we're going to allow the user to make 2 decisions. So the first choice will decide, between like 2 completely different branches. And then inside those 2 branches, we're going to give them another choice. And so 2 different things could happen here, and 2 different possible things could happen here. In total, we'll have to have 4 different endings, okay? Because 2 possibilities for branch 1, 2 possibilities for branch 2. Okay? So we'll print out our setting, and this is going to be very simple and very silly because I'm just trying to show you the nested conditionals. I'm not really going to put a lot of thought into creating a really funny story. So we'll just print out you are camping in the woods and you hear a loud bang. Do you stay in the tent or go investigate? So right now, all we have done is just printed out a sentence. And remember, we use print as a reserved word. And because I have quotation marks here, it's just going to print out that text exactly like you see it. And then because I am going to ask them a question, and you know what? We'll make this our prompt where they can read in our response. So I'll just do this one. And then I need to use the input command because I need to read in their answer, right? I'm going to ask them a question. I want to give them the ability to respond. So I'm going to use the input command. And the way input works is we give them a prompt. So my prompt is going to be, do you stay in the tent or go investigate? And then I'm going to read in their answer and I'll store it in a variable. So we'll call this, this will be choice 1. Because this is the first decision that I've given them to make. Now, what is going to happen in my story will be different depending on if they stay in the tent or they go see what the bang was, right? So I need an if statement that's going to check what they entered in as choice 1. Does it match what I want to happen for my first story versus my second one? So I'm going to have an if statement. If is a reserved word. And then after that, we put the conditional. What do I want to know? I want to know if whatever they typed in for choice 1 is the same as what key term am I searching for here? Well, did they say tent? And then down here, we could say elif. Did they say investigate? And then if they didn't say either one of those things, then we can just say else, right? Because it's going to have been one of these options. Okay, so we've got our 3 options. Either they went to the tent, or we told them to investigate, or they gave us the wrong answer, one of the 2. So what's going to happen if they choose to stay in the tent? If they choose to stay in the tent, then we can tell them, turns out the bang was thunder. It starts raining a downpour. Oh, no, that's going to be my prompt for my next choice. So I'm going to put that in my input, right? So we can say input. So this is going to be their second choice that they get. Should you check on the tent stakes or stay dry? And so this is going to ask them a question, and we want to be able to read in their answer and save it. So let's put this inside of a variable. So we'll call this choice 2. And I made the font a lot bigger to make it easier for you to see, but I think that's making it not very clear about my tabbing over. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller again. So here we have our first question. If they chose to stay in the tent, then it's going to start raining. It's raining down really hard. Maybe they want to go check on the tent stakes, or maybe if it's raining really hard outside, you would stay in your tent to stay dry. So here we have a second choice, and we're going to make 2 endings, okay? So there's going to be a different ending depending on what they said. So I need another if statement, right? So up here, this was the parent conditional. These were like the 2 main branches. And inside here, we're going to have the final endings. We're going to have 2 more conditionals. And the only way you can get to these 2 endings is if they originally decided to stay in the tent, right? So we're going to say if, oh, I keep doing parentheses by habit. You don't need them in Python. If choice 2 equals check, if they're going to check the tent stakes, then we're going to say, we'll print out the stakes were fine and you got drenched. I guess better safe than sorry. Sure, why not? Okay. However, if they don't go check on them, else, if they chose to stay dry, the rain made the ground soft and your tent washed away. You wake up the next morning in the lake. That is actually based on a true story, which did happen to my family when we were camping when we were young. So there was a big thunderstorm and the tent did wash away and we did wake up floating on our little air mattresses out in the lake. So maybe you should go check the stakes if you're camping and you hear a really bad rain coming down. So then these are our two endings for our story, and what you get is going to depend on if you chose tent and whether or not you chose to go check your stakes. Okay, so then we'll come down here and we'll look at our second branch. What happens if you go to investigate the downpour? And if somebody comes down here to this path, they have no idea what happened up here in the first one. We can make a completely different story because they're never going to see these options. If the computer looks at this conditional and it was false, it's going to skip all of this and then come down here and check out the second one. So none of these previous print statements that we wrote up here, none of them will be ran at all. The user won't see any of it. So what happens if you go to investigate the bang? Okay, so we'll say, oh, of course, it is the 4th of July, right? We just had that last weekend. So it is the 4th of July. You see a beautiful fireworks show. So that was nice that you went to investigate. You got something nice happen. And then we're going to print out and give them a second choice. So we will say, we're going to use that input command. If I want to get their response in, I need to read an input. So what question are we going to give them? So there is something moving in the bushes. Do you check it out or leave it alone? And then once again, we need to read in their response somewhere. So we will call this. So what's going to happen down here is another if statement. We're going to have our two endings for this path. So these are going to be our final endings, and we'll have two different endings based on whether they go check out what's in the bushes or whether they leave it alone. So if they decide to check, if they go check out what happened in the bushes, then we are going to print, no, it was a skunk and he sprayed you. Better look for some tomato sauce. Also a true story and from the same camping trip as the previous one. It was my brother-in-law and we were all down swimming in the lake and he was taking a nap and the skunk came sniffing around the campsite, I guess maybe attracted to the food or something, I don't know, but it scared him and he woke up from his nap and he jumped and that scared the skunk and the skunk sprayed him. So that was a very interesting camping trip. And then we will have else, if you do not go investigate, then you're safe. So you leave whatever it was alone and enjoy the fireworks. What a great camping trip. So I guess, you know, depending on how they answer things, you can either have a really nice trip, or you can wind up in the lake, or you can wind up sprayed by a skunk. Now, if none of those initial choices were true, and I'm going to kind of move this over so that you can see the indentation here. Look at how this lines up. This first statement here, all of these that kind of have that vertical alignment, these are the ones that are all joined together. Either choice 1 was tent, or choice 2 was investigate, or I'm sorry, choice 1 was investigate, or if they didn't do either one of those things, they must have entered in an answer that was not a valid answer. So we can just print out and tell them. We can say that was not a valid choice. And then once you get into one of these branches, you get a little extra sentence of story. You get to make one more decision, and then you get your final ending. I'd like to point out these drop arrows that are over here. You can use these to collapse or expand your segments of code, and that can help make it a lot more readable when you have a big, long program, or when you have lots of things nested over. You can kind of get confused with stuff, and it's nice a little bit to be able to collapse things. So let's say we were down there trying to work on that second branch. I didn't need any of this anymore. None of this was important. I could click this arrow and collapse all of that. And now it's so much nicer. Like, it's so much easier for me to say, okay, if they go to investigate what happens, only this right here that I can see right now. And then if I was working on the first branch, you know, maybe I would want to collapse that one, and I would only want to look at this first one. And that's just a way that you can kind of help manage large programs, especially when you have a lot of like a big different flow of control. So we'll go ahead and just run our little program. We'll test it out, make sure it works correctly. And then that'll be it for this video. That's just a little bit more programming practice and some more examples using conditionals. Hopefully after this example, you'll feel confident to write program 2. So let's see here. We'll run it. If I am camping in the woods and I hear a loud bang, yeah, I would go investigate. I'd be worried. What if it was something dangerous? So I would investigate. What if there's like a crazy person with a gun out there? Oh, and it's the 4th of July. We just forgot. So it was fireworks, and there's a beautiful show. So that's nice. And then if there's something moving in the bushes, do you check it out? Well, yeah, we've already established that I'm going to investigate things because I'm scared of stuff. So I want to know if it's something dangerous or not. So I'm going to investigate it both times. And oh, somehow I got my, I'm going to run that one more time because I got the cursor off. So we investigated, and then we are going to check it out was the second option. Oh no, it was a skunk and he sprayed you. Better look for some tomato sauce. So we can kind of go through and see how that happened. We chose investigate, which made us come into this path here. We chose check, which made us go into this path here. And that is the ending that we got. So you could kind of, you know, see if you would be able to predict what different endings you would get and kind of what you would have to type in to get to certain ones. And go ahead and work on program 2. Let me know if you have any questions, and you could always come to the Zoom meeting and we could write some more code there and kind of go through some more examples. Thank you.